Good evening. Who's cold? Nobody's cold. That's great. I was going to suggest if you're cold, get up and run around. And I'll preach anyhow, no matter where you're at, and it's not going to bother me in the least. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm sorry about that. You know how it gets this time of year, particularly when you got rain outside and all of that that's going on. It's a penetrating kind of chill. I don't want to say cold, but kind of a chill. And I've got a jacket on, and I feel cool up here, so sorry about that. We'll try to work on it in the future. Till then, you have to tough it out. Just to make yourself think heaven will be warmer than this, and you won't be in a place that'll be hotter than this, and so that's a good thing. We're looking at the second part of a message that I started, I believe, last week on a lovely lesson. 1 Corinthians 12:31, just taking that one verse in chapter 12 and going down through some of the verses in chapter 13. And this is dealing with the agape love that the Lord gives. And really what we're going to be doing here is measuring ourselves. That's what we want to do. I don't need to look at Jerry and say, does Jerry love me the way that he should? Or don't need to think about him and his lack of love toward anybody at all. But I need to be measuring Don Stayton, because that's the only one that I can really see my heart. And I wonder about that sometimes. But let's start reading at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 31. But covet earnestly the best gifts, and yet show I unto you a more excellent way. Though I speak with the tongues of men, now you're in chapter 13, verse 1. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, or agape love, I am become a sounding brass or a tingling cymbal. Though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Now, what I've done there in those verses I've read to you, that took care of my first point, the lack of love. He's given us a contrast, is what he's doing. He's showing what happens to the individual that has a lack of love. Kobe is always stimulating me because he's really a smart kid, not just because he's my grandson, but he really is. He asks some very profound questions. He's always wondering about things that are going on. And I was reading over this message before I got here tonight, and he was looking at some things and asked me, he said, is this just for everybody? And when he writes that, is it supposed to be the love that I have for everybody, even the people I may not like the most in the world? Am I supposed to have this kind of love? And I said, well, what do you think? I said, you're easy for me to love because you're my grandson. We have a relationship, but there are some people that aren't as easily to love. Would those things still apply here? I'm not going to give you an answer. You need to think about that. Some of the scriptures I'll be using, I think, will answer that. But let's go on over now to continue on in chapter 13 and pick up in verse 4. Because beginning in verse 4 and down through verse 7, we're going to have the look of love. Only 2 points to this message. Last week I gave you the first one, the lack of love, and how he describes that for us. And now we get to measure the positive side of this. He says, charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. Doth not behave itself unseemly. Seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked. Thinketh no evil. Rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth. Beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, and endureth all things. That's what we have in a description that's given to us concerning the deepest kind of love. I only gave you a few in the Greek language, but he uses the deepest one here, which is agape. It's a kind of love that God has for us, kind of love that he expressed in John 3:16. For God so agape the world that he gave his only begotten Son, the kind of love that needs to be there. Now, I only have 2 subpoints even with this, and it's going to take me a little while to get through this. We're going to stop about 20 till. In fact, we'll stop earlier than that so that we can have our prayer time together. We're going to have a baptismal service tonight. These are, again, baptisms that came as a result of camp. And Marsh asked if we could do it on Wednesday night. We can do it in any service here as long as we have preparation so that the baptistry waters are warm and clean and all that stuff. And she's got a couple of kids that are going to be baptized tonight, and so we're rejoicing in that. Jeremy's going to come over and do that. Paul's purpose here is for us to carefully and honestly measure our lives. I need to measure Don Stayton in this, and you need to measure yourself by these characteristics of love. And we need to remember, as I'm going to be pointing out to you in this first subpoint, the linguistics. I know some of you don't much like me to get in it, but there's times when you need that. It really gives you some good information. And it does in this particular one when you look at the linguistics. Let me read you 1 John 3:18. My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. And so that sums up what he's doing here. He's not so much giving us a description of love as much as he is, this is what love does. He's not describing love, but this is, if you want to measure yourself, do it with anybody that you know, because the one thing, and I'm giving that away, I didn't to him today, but the one thing that we need to know, it's for everybody. True love does not scrutinize. I have a different kind of love for Donna than I do for anybody else. It's a very deep one that I feel many, many times and expresses itself emotionally in my life in one way or another all the time. And you understand that too. I understand that in the relationships of life that we have, our love is expressed more deeply with some than it is with others. But what we're trying to do with this is I want to make sure my heart's right with God. And that's what I'm hoping you want to do too. And so maybe through this what we need to do is make a comparison of some that aren't as lovely, some that are harder for us to love than others are. Some of you are just so easy to love and so easy to minister to, but there are others that it's not that easy. It's difficult. It's very difficult. But it doesn't change the fact that we have to have the kind of love that needs to be there for all people. The Greek forms of all these properties of the loves are they're verbs. That's really interesting. The Greek forms are given to us in verbs because they don't focus so much on what love is as much as what love does and what love does not do. And so as I go through these 11 aspects, and then if we get to it, there's going to be 3 or 4 other aspects that he uses to finish that up that we're going to try and understand and get an understanding about. Now I want to drive this home, what I just gave to you in the Greek forms, that it's in verbs, indicating that he's wanting us not so much to understand what love is as practice it, have it in our life. And we'll do our best to make application of this and see how we can change. If we find that the love in our life is not what it needs to be toward others, then maybe we can change it somewhere or another. In fact, I know we can. And so it doesn't simply mean that I feel patient. It means that I practice patience. It doesn't so much simply have kind feelings as much as it means doing kind things to people. And love is fully only when it is put into action. It can't just be talked about. It rejoices in truth. It doesn't just understand the truth. We don't just hang it on a wall and say, well, there's the 10 Commandments. Or we don't just take verses of Scripture and look at them and say, wow, that's powerful. How are we practicing that in our own lives? And this is going to be valuable for our church. It'll be valuable for your home. It'll be valuable for you in any relationship that you have that's holding you hostage. By that I mean, and I mean this sincerely, any relationship where the love is not what it needs to be, you're held hostage. God loves every single person that you know, and we're to be just as he is. And so, just like in John 3:16, when he says, for God so loved the world that he felt emotional about it. It's not what it says. God so loved the world that he gave. There's always something being done when you're talking about love. John 15:13 says, doesn't say that greater love hath no man than this, that he feel emotional about his friends. See, a lot of times that's what happens to us. We feel something swell up. But what he's really teaching us here is that that scripture that I just read to you, it doesn't say that he feels emotional. It says that he lays down his life. Would you lay down, let's just look around here in the auditorium right now. Would you lay down your life for people in this auditorium? Harvey, you laid down your life. You really did. I know you don't much like me to talk about that, but you risked your life for some guys that were really hurting and laid down your life. The Bible says, no greater love hath no man than this, that a man would give his life for his brother. And so those are things that we need to look at. Now let's get into the list. And having that understanding that love is not just an emotion, it's an action. And here's the first thing that he gives to us. Love suffereth long. This agape love that we're talking about, this agape love, it suffers long. That means it's patient. It's long-tempered. Let me read you. I'm going to give you a proof text all the way through this, and some of them you'll probably look at and say, what do you mean by that? I'll try my best to explain that to you. Romans chapter 12 and verse 17. Now, this is where you're going to see love. Here's what I want to do to set this up. Has someone hurt you? Well, if you're living, everybody's listening to me right now, you've been hurt. You've probably been hurt by somebody in this auditorium. Maybe you've been hurt by me. What I really want you to stop and think about when you're thinking about this aspect, that it suffereth long. It's very patient. I don't get mad at Donna very often. But one of the things may be the strength of our marriage. We raised our kids in the same way, that we wouldn't let them criticize each other. But what I mean by that, calling each other names, putting each other down, we didn't permit that in our home. We dealt with it if somebody tried to do it. And I really don't remember times when they did it, but Don and I practiced that. I never would get mad at her and say something that I knew I would regret. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't somewhere along. I'm sure that I did. I don't know if you can remember any times, but she was always the same way with me. And that's a powerful thing to have. We swallow hard, and we become very patient in what we're going to be doing in our love. Now, here's what I want you to see in this scripture, Romans 12:17. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Don't pay back somebody that's been evil to you with evil to them. Remember what we're doing here. We're trying to get a description of love in action. And that's one of the ways. If you can think of someone that you want to get even with, then that's an indication you don't have love for them like you ought to have love for them. Now, this message is not, at least not in my heart, it's not designed to put anybody down. It's not. This message is designed to build each other up by being honest with ourselves and seeing when there's a lack of love and being able to repent of it and turn from it. In the Greek world, self-sacrificing love and non-avenging patience were considered weaknesses. And that's true in many religions today. Here's what Aristotle said, for instance. He taught that the great Greek virtue was refusal to tolerate insult or injury and to strike back for the slightest offense. That's what Aristotle said. That's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, if Dan Dole has hurt me, I am not to seek a way to hurt him back. And if I am seeking a way to hurt him back, it means that I have a lack of love for him individually. You said, well, he has a lack of love toward you too because he hurt you, didn't he? Yeah, that's true. And that's what we're trying to get settled here. You understand, it's only an example that I'm trying to use here. We're trying to get this settled in all of our lives because one thing I know for sure, nobody, no matter who you are, makes it through life without being hurt by somebody. And as I've said to you many, many times, the capacity for someone that loves us to hurt us is the greatest there is in the world. You know, if you don't care about someone, they probably can't hurt you at all. But for you and I, it's somewhat different because we're Christians and we have this understanding that God requires certain things of us. And one of them is that His love would radiate forth from us, and we can stop that from happening by having a backslidden life in one way or another. Robert Ingersoll, he was a well-known atheist of the last century, and he would often, you've heard this before, he would often stop in the middle of his lectures against God, and here's what he would say. I'll give God 5 minutes to strike me dead for the things I've said. And then he would use that fact to prove that there was no God because God didn't strike him dead. Until one day he had a man who was in his class by the name of Theodore Parker who was a Christian. And Theodore Parker looked at him and said, and do you think that you could exhaust the patience of the eternal God in 5 minutes? Now think of that for just a moment. Because here's what that's designed to do, that illustration. How patient has God been with you in the hurt that you've caused Him in your life? Maybe it would do us a little bit of good to just think back about how we have hurt God. I'm thinking post-Christian life, after we've believed, how we hurt Him. Well, we hurt Him through sin. We hurt Him through denial. There's a lot of ways that we can hurt God. But that's important for us to have that understanding. Now, there's a second thing that he points out here, trying to give us these verbs that will let us understand what love is so that we can put it in action in our life. And he says, love is kind. And what it means is that it's useful, it's serving, it's generous, it's gracious. And here's one of the ways that that's done. Matthew chapter 5, verses 40 and 41. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. You get the point that he is making here when he says love is kind. You see a need in someone's life, go beyond what is expected. And sometimes we'll jokingly, as Donna will look at her wardrobe and I'll look at my wardrobe, and we realize we have way too many clothes. When you run out of closets, you got too many clothes and shoes. We won't even touch that subject. That's just a bad thing. But you get what the point is that he's given to us here? It can be in the giving things that we do with people in their lives too. Reaching out to them because of love that we have in our heart. And just as patience will take anything from others, kindness will give anything to others. Let me repeat that. Just as patience will take anything from others. Now, I remember when I put that down, that could be misunderstood. He's not talking about taking another guy's shirt, although it could be that too. As much as what he's talking about here is taking from someone something that is hurtful. Someone stands in your face, gets right in your face, right on your nose, and they're letting you have it about whatever. And you can stand there and take it. Love enables you to do that. And so the idea is working for the welfare of other people. That's what he wants us to see here. We're to be kind to others. Now, I want to keep it right here if we can. And as I do this, I don't want you to be obvious, and I don't want William to turn around and stare at Harvey and say, oh, I don't know about him. Just glance around and think to yourself, is there anybody in here tonight that I'm less than kind to? That can be very convicting. The number 3 thing is he says that if you really do have agape love for someone, you won't envy. You won't be jealous of things they have, things they do. And one of the points that he makes here can be brought out in James chapter 3, verses 14 through 16. But if you have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom, now he's being facetious here, this kind of wisdom, this false wisdom, that's what he's really saying, descends not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. There's 2 forms of jealousy that I want to deal with here. At least mention them to you and let the Holy Spirit of God do his work. And here's what one of them says. I want what someone else has. I want what someone else has. That can be material things. I want the kind of car that he has. I want the kind of house that he has. I want the kind of job that he has. Or that can be a spiritual thing. Why didn't God give me this gift? Why should he get this gift? It's simply looking at someone else and wishing that you had what they have. And here's an even worse form of this. Remember what we're talking about here, not being jealous. I wish they didn't have what they have. I don't necessarily want it, but I don't want them to have it. That can be influence. That can be all kinds of things besides material things. It just depends where your own heart is at. Why can't I sing like someone? Why can't I speak like someone? Why can't I, that list goes on and on and on. I want to say it to you over and over again. God don't make junk, and God made you the way you are. Now, I'm not excusing laziness and developing spiritual gifts and all that stuff, but God wanted you to be the way you are. And that's why he's got you the way that he's made you, giving you the exact gifts where you can bring the best honor and glory to his holy name. And then, number 4, he gives us a point, love vaunteth not itself. It doesn't brag. Now, I shouldn't do this. Does anybody come to your mind immediately? You think of bragging? See, how would that come across? I'm thinking about going on a cruise to Alaska. I'd like to do that. I'd like to take my wife. That's about the only thing that I really want to do. We thought about maybe going to Montana again this year, but we've done that so much, and we've seen how it's deteriorated so much. The herds of elk and the herds of buffalo just are gone. They're not like they were, hundreds, innumerable. You'd see them out in these pastures, big fields, and now you'll see 50 here and maybe 20 over here, and it's just totally different. Various reasons why I'll say. And so we were thinking of that. And so you begin talking about what your next trip is going to be like, and someone says, "Oh, let me tell you where I've been." Or you talk about something good that's happened. "Oh, if you think that's good, let me tell you about what happened to me." Everything is redirected away from you to them. We had a conversation with a friend of mine in a couple of hours, and in that couple of hours, I don't want to exaggerate this. We probably didn't say a half a dozen sentences, but we found out a lot about his life. He talked and talked and talked about his life, and we just kind of smiled and said, "That's wonderful. God's really blessed your life. We're so happy to see that your life's being blessed." Now, I'm putting myself in a good light. Do you understand what I've just done, even as devious? I put myself in a good light because I'm putting him in a bad light. Do you understand what I'm really doing? I'm putting him down in order to build me up. You see the human nature of that? There are people in this world that can't feel good about themselves unless they're putting other people down. And they do it subtly. "I got one better than that. I've been a better place than you've been. I made more money than you." That's how it's done. And here's what he's saying. He says, what you're witnessing when you see that is a lack of love. That's what causes that. Because when a person's full of love, they've got the other person's mind, their welfare in mind beyond their own. And over again, that's really what this is all about. And so that's why he said what he did. Let me read it to you again. "But if you have bitter envy and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descends not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. For where envy and strife is, there is confusion in every evil work," even when you're smiling doing it. And so we shouldn't have this idea that we want what somebody else has, and we shouldn't have this idea that I wish they didn't have what they have. Period. And this vaunteth not itself. It doesn't brag. That just plays right in with it too. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 26. I keep repeating like that. We're never going to get through this. "How is it then, brethren, when you come together, every one of you," this is really interesting. He's writing to a church that's very divided. Spiritual gifts are obvious in the church that God has given. And he says, "How is it, brethren, when you come together in the church atmosphere? Every one of you has a psalm, has a doctrine, has a tongue, has a revelation, hath an interpretation. Let all things be done unto edifying." And here's the idea back in that day. Preacher comes ready to preach to the church, and he gets a sentence or so out, and brother stands up and says, "Brother, my gift of prophecy needs to speak." And he's got another one, then he wants to stand up and says, "I got a better one than that." He's not going to say it like that. "I got a better one than that." Boy, did God. And so we build our own spirituality up. We want people to think we're something that we have even doubts about ourselves. Now, one of the men that was in a church back in New Testament days, he said, "Diotrephes loves to have the preeminence." Are you like that? I've discovered, this is just me talking, most people that I've ever been around that are, that's going to be preachers, that are up in front of people on a regular basis, it's not 100% true, but it's close to it. They just soon be in the background. They just soon come into a service and sit as far back as they can or way up in the balcony somewhere where nobody's going to call on them and nobody's going to say, "Oh, brother so-and-so is here tonight. Come on, brother." And they give them preeminence. They just want to be in the background. Most preachers I know are like that. And I mean that as a compliment to most preachers because they'll be ready when it's time to stand up. But listen, this matter that I'm talking about here, vaunteth not itself, doesn't brag. You can do that in so many ways. Can I say to you that God won't put up with that very long? He won't. It is a form of stealing his honor and his glory. And God won't share his glory with anybody, period. Now, if you think of that in a human term, you're going to get an idea of God that just isn't there. So this was a problem that was in the church at Corinth. Each did his own thing as prominently as possible. Let me repeat it. Each person in that church did what they did as prominently as possible. And the idea is talking in a conceited manner, a sin that fosters jealousy. Bragging, now listen to this. Bragging is trying to make others jealous of what we have. It stimulates the sin of jealousy. And so jealousy puts others down and bragging builds self up. Now, be aware of that, because we're all guilty of it one way or another. If you find yourself with a lot of I, me, and you find yourself when someone is rejoicing in some goodness that's in their life, and you can't wait to break in there, you're trying to be diplomatic about it, you can't wait to break in there and tell them your story. Now, you're fixing to sin. The Bible's very clear when someone comes in and says, you know what, here's what's been going on, we're to rejoice with them. We don't need to give them one better or even one equal. We just need to rejoice with them, that God's being so good to them. And the way that he puts it in Scripture is in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Let each esteem others better than themselves. Number 5, this agape kind of love is not puffed up. That means it's not arrogant. These are all very akin. Actually, you could lump them together. It means that they're not arrogant. Now, it would do all of us good to do this individually by ourselves. I hesitate somewhat with that. My wife is a very humble person, and Donna really is. She's, and another one that I hope I'm going to have time to get to, she really sees the best in other people. I mean, even when people have done some really bad things, she'll really do her best to find something. And I think she just does it naturally. I know you're a sinner by nature too, but I think she just does that in somewhat of a natural way. I want you to stop and think about yourself right now. Are there any times in your life that you would look at you in the mirror and say, Lord, forgive me, I've been arrogant. I want to brag, I want to build me up. I'm arrogant. I think more of myself than I have any right to think. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. The fear of the Lord is to hate pride. The fear of the Lord, that means holding God in awe. That your view of God is so awesome that it refuses to let these things be in your life. The awesomeness of the Lord will stop us from pride, will stop us from arrogancy, will stop us from the evil way, the froward mouth. He says, and I hate those things. That's what Paul said. So let's measure that before we move on. This entire matter of being puffed up, of being arrogant, identify it in your own life if it's there. Let the Lord identify it in your life. Remember what my motivation, and hopefully you're getting this yourself. I want to walk out of here with an agape love in the way that it ought to be in my life. Pride's what he's talking about here, and our attitude should be what John the Baptist was. There's no other than Jesus on the cross, there's no greater illustration I can give you. Listen to this in John chapter 1, verse 27. He it is who coming, as John the Baptist speaking about Jesus. He it is who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoe latchet I am not worthy to unloose. You know, one of the dangers of compliments, and I'm a firm believer that if you can say something good about someone sincerely, you should do it. But one of the jobs that we have when someone's pouring those accolades on us is to not absorb it, but to reflect it. I always appreciate it, and if I'm saying this because sometimes I feel awkward about it. And anybody who's in front of people can tell you this. Any Sunday school teacher in here, doesn't matter who you are, you're in front of people. And when someone walks out and says, wow, that was a really good message, you try to reflect it and say, well, truth is always that way. And it's true. Truth is always that way. But you're trying to have the right attitude, understanding these things that I'm preaching to you. I don't care how great a message may appear to be to you. I know where it came from. Not me. The Lord took control of me to speak through me, but the pleasure is mine. That's not because I'm somebody really bright or whatever it may be. The Lord is the one who does it. Same way with singing. I remember sharing with you how when I was in a quartet years ago when I was in college and how bad I was. They kicked me out of the quartet. Said I just wasn't good enough to sing with them. And that really hurt my feelings. It did. And these guys thought they were really good. And I can remember sitting there after they had announced to me that they were kicking me out of the quartet. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, well, they don't sound that good either. Just anger in myself. They were pretty good. And so those are the things that we deal with in life and the things that come. John the Baptist's attitude is to be our attitude. He must increase and I must decrease. I want to give you a catchy phrase that will be on the screen behind me. Arrogance is big-headed. Arrogance is big-headed, and love is big-hearted. Now absorb that. That is to be one of the guiding things of our life. We don't want to become big-headed and think about ourselves in ways that we shouldn't at all. Number 6, doth not behave itself unseemly. And that means that it's not indecent. Here's a good illustration from Scripture. When the Apostle Paul's writing to the church at Corinth, once again, you notice how many times I'm using Corinth because they had everything out of whack there. He says, talking about the Lord's Supper, for in eating everyone, actually a love feast, for in eating everyone taketh before the other his own supper. One is hungry and another is drunken. Homecoming's a great time around our church, and people routinely will say, you can't find better food anywhere. I agree. And you'll see people as they're walking through the lines and people that are saying the things that they're saying and pouring the praises out on us. Can you imagine if we were to have, over here are the people in our church that contributed more. And if you brought a good casserole and some good desserts, you would put it over on this table. And you poor folks over here that may not have brought anything at all, well, you're just going to have to learn. You're going to have to eat off your own table there, and so I hope you brought something for yourself, because if you didn't do as good as we did, then you can't have it. That's what was going on in Corinth. What is that a description of? A complete lack of love. That is building up themselves and putting down the others. I think we're going to stop here right after this next point, number 7, so that we can have a prayer time together. Joe, will you do it again? Doth not seek her own. Has the welfare of others in mind. Selfishness is what it's talking about. Philippians 2:4. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. And what he's talking about there is the need in other people's lives. That's to motivate us. I'm going to leave you with this. This really caught my attention. Maybe it'll help you too. It's a contrast of 2 inscriptions on tombstones that express the meaning of what I'm trying to bring across to you here in doth not seek her own. I wonder what would be put on your tombstone without your direction. Hope it wouldn't be this. Here lies a miser who lived for himself and cared for nothing but gathering wealth. Now where he is or how he fares, nobody knows and nobody cares. Think of that. What a terrible thing. You die, nobody cares. Well, here's the counterpart to that on a tombstone. This is actually on a tombstone in the courtyard of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and here's what it says. Sacred to the memory of General Charles George Gordon, who at all times and everywhere gave his strength to the weak, his substance to the poor, his sympathy to the suffering, and his heart to God. Now, you may wish that someone more qualified to bring such a humbling message than me would do it, but it has fallen to my responsibility. And so let's just bow together for just a moment and reflect upon how God may have spoken to your heart, me to mine. He knows exactly what to say to us, because he sees where we can't see. The whole idea here is to be filled with the love of Christ. And let no man, no woman, no person be outside of the spectrum of that love. That's what he wants. A lot of people in our church are like that. Lori Eaton comes to my mind. She just blows my mind with her dedication to friends when they're in need. She'll be the first there. She will. She'll be the one shedding tears. And there are others. I used the Wynn family last week, and I could have used many of you right in here tonight. Father, we want to be this way. Help us, Lord, as we surrender ourselves to you, to allow you to rebuke us, to change us in whatever way that you need to change us. But we want to be filled with the love of Christ, and we want that to be seen by the world so that they will know who he is and what he has done for them upon the cross of Calvary. In Jesus' name we pray.